There's a certain kind of restlessness that doesn't make noise. It just sits with you, quiet, persistent, and heavy. You feel it in the moments between tasks, in the pauses after conversations, in the late-night thoughts that loop without permission. Not panic, not chaos. Just a subtle, constant tension, as if your mind won't let you unclench. The tension comes from one thing, holding on, to outcomes, to old stories, to what you can't change and still try to control. But there's a different way to live. Not numb, not checked out, just clear. Disciplined in what you give your energy to. Free in the places you used to feel stuck. That's what Stoicism offers, a kind of quiet power, not through detachment, but through mastery, of focus, of perception, of what you let in and what you finally release. In this video, we'll explore 10 Stoic principles that help you stop carrying what doesn't serve you and start living with peace that doesn't depend on everything going right. This is the art of letting go. Not by losing your heart, but by protecting your center. Let's begin. 1. Control what's within. Release what's without. Some truths hit harder when life stops cooperating. You might know this one. Control what you can, let go of what you can't. Sounds simple, until something actually goes wrong. You're prepared. You've done your part. And then, without warning, life flips the table. A delay, a mistake, a loss, something you didn't cause but now have to carry. In those moments, the old habits show up. Frustration, blame, panic. You replay what should have happened. You tense up. You fight the truth with emotion. But what if you didn't? The Stoics taught that peace begins the moment we stop trying to control the uncontrollable. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. A broken car is just a fact. Your anger, that's an interpretation. A missed call, that's an event. Your spiral into insecurity, that's a choice, often made unconsciously." This isn't about ignoring your feelings or pretending nothing affects you. It's about noticing the space between the event and your reaction, and owning that space like it's your home. Because it is. That's where your power lives. Not in fixing everything out there, but in regulating what happens in here. When you anchor your peace in what's yours to shape, your mindset, your behavior, your words, you begin to feel less like a victim of circumstance and more like the steady force you forgot you could be. The external world doesn't owe you calm, but your mind, that's yours. That's where the battle is, and where the freedom starts. 2. Embrace the present moment. Modern life makes a lot of noise, not just around you, but inside you. Your body might be in the room, but your mind is in 3 places at once. The email you forgot to send, the argument you wish had gone differently. The future you're trying to script before it even arrives, and somewhere in that mental chaos, the present slips past unnoticed. The Stoics didn't romanticize the present, they honored it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Do not let the future disturb you, for you will meet it if you must, with the same reason that arms you today." That wasn't just philosophy, it was survival, because the moment you stop living here, in this breath, this choice, this hour, you become a ghost in your own life. Presence isn't a performance, it's a discipline, and it doesn't mean you stop planning or reflecting. It means you stop mistaking thought for control. That phone call you're nervous about, it's not happening right now. That regret from last week, it's not unfolding again unless you let it. Meanwhile, life is still happening, and you're missing it. This isn't about guilt, it's about awareness, because the best parts of life, the laughter, the insight, the sudden calm, they don't live in the past or the future. They live here. They arrive quietly, often in overlooked details. A child's glance, the taste of something warm, the soft edge of someone's voice when they say your name with care. The more you return to the present, the less power your worries have, not because they're solved, but because they're not in charge anymore. And when you start choosing this moment, not the imaginary ones, you begin to notice something. You're actually okay, maybe even good, maybe even alive in a way you forgot you could be. 3. Accept change as nature's rhythm. Change doesn't knock, it walks in uninvited, unannounced, and suddenly everything feels unfamiliar. What was steady becomes uncertain. What you counted on disappears. A relationship shifts, a job ends, a chapter you weren't ready to close turns its final page anyway, and the instinct is almost always the same: resist. But Stoicism teaches a different reflex, not detachment but alignment. Epictetus reminded us what matters is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it. The world will change, with or without your permission. The choice isn't whether to stop it, it's whether to suffer by fighting it or grow by moving with it. Change feels cruel when we treat it like a betrayal. But what if it's just the world evolving, the way seasons do? What if it's not a threat, but a new rhythm, asking you to adjust your steps? I once met a man who had built his entire identity around his work. The title, the routine, the respect, it was his structure. And then retirement came. Slowly, the silence of unoccupied time crept in. He felt invisible. For months he fought the shift, tried to recreate the old world, but eventually he started to listen. He found new meaning in small things: mentoring, slow mornings, handwritten letters. The change hadn't taken his purpose. It had given him a new one. You don't have to love change. You just have to stop fearing it, because every shift, even the painful ones, carries something: a truth, a test, a new piece of you waiting to be discovered. The Stoics didn't say change wouldn't hurt. They said it would heal if you let it. So the next time life moves the ground beneath you, try this. Don't dig your heels in. Plant your feet gently. Let the rhythm shift. You might find the new beat fits you better than the old one ever did. 4. Detach from external validation. There's a strange emptiness that comes from doing everything right and still feeling unseen. You show up. You give your best. You're kind, thoughtful, disciplined, but the recognition doesn't come. Or worse, it comes inconsistently. A few likes, a short compliment, a silence that cuts deeper than criticism. And you wonder, am I doing this for me or for them? The Stoics were crystal clear on this. Applause isn't the measure of a meaningful life. Epictetus put it sharply: if you wish to be good, begin by believing that you are bad. Not because you are, but because growth demands honesty, not performance, and honesty doesn't need an audience. In a world wired for feedback, detaching from external validation feels unnatural. But chasing it? That's a cage, one you decorate with approval, but which tightens every time someone else's opinion carries more weight than your own clarity. I remember someone who started posting her thoughts online, reflections on aging, resilience, grace. They were honest, warm, thoughtful. At first, the responses flooded in: gratitude, resonance, connection, but then less. The silence crept in. One negative comment left a bruise that lasted days, and suddenly something that began as self-expression became a performance for applause. She nearly stopped until she remembered why she began: not to be liked, but to be real. And when she returned to that space, to her truth, not their reaction, her voice changed. It got clearer, bolder. And something else happened. She started respecting herself again. This is the Stoic shift. When you stop measuring your worth by who claps, you start building it on something unshakable. Approval fades, but virtue, living in line with what you believe is right, that's the kind of fulfillment that doesn't require permission. So write your truth, speak it, live it, and if it lands in silence, let that silence be sacred. Because you weren't made to impress strangers. You were made to walk your path with dignity, even if no one's watching, especially then. 5. Recognize life's natural cycles. There's a rhythm to life that doesn't ask for your agreement. It simply moves. Seasons turn, people leave, chapters close, and in the quiet that follows, something inside you aches for the familiar, the steady, the known. It's natural. We grieve not just what we've lost, but who we were when we had it. Loss, whether it's a loved one, a job, a version of ourselves, is one of the most powerful teachers we'll ever encounter, but only if we stop resisting long enough to listen. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. Not to minimize your pain, not to dismiss the weight of it, but to reframe it as transition, not punishment, as the shape-shifting of life itself." I once spoke to a man, Carl, who lost his wife after 35 years. He wasn't just grieving her, he was grieving routine, laughter, the way she folded towels or hummed while cooking. Her absence changed the air. For a long time, he tried to preserve the old world. He kept everything in place. But it hurt more, not less. Until one day, he realized he wasn't honoring her by refusing to live. He was freezing her memory in a space she wouldn't want him stuck in. He didn't move on, he moved forward, slowly, with reverence, not resistance. That's what Stoicism invites you to do, to see life not as a series of permanent gains or tragic losses, but as a cycle. What falls away makes room. What ends is a teacher. What breaks your heart may open it too. The more you align with that rhythm, the impermanence of everything, the more you begin to treasure what's here now. You hug longer. You listen deeper. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to love, or speak, or act, because you know this one might be the only one. Loss will come, but so will light if you don't close the door. Let change be the current, and your peace, the steady raft that rides it. 6. Seek growth in adversity. Most people avoid pain. We label it as failure, bad luck, something to get through as quickly as possible. But the Stoics, they saw it differently. To them, adversity wasn't an interruption of the path. It was the path. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." He wasn't speaking in metaphor. He meant it literally. Your mind, like any muscle, grows through resistance. And life provides that resistance in unpredictable, often unwanted ways. Think of Abraham Lincoln, one of the most respected leaders in history, but his path was paved with loss. His mother at 9, repeated political failures, the death of children, crushing depression. Yet it was the very pain that shaped his depth, his empathy, his ability to lead with steadiness when the world around him fractured. His greatness didn't happen in spite of adversity. It was forged by it. You don't have to lead a nation to feel this. Maybe your pain comes in quieter forms, the job you didn't get, the illness that redefined your daily life, the loneliness that no one else seems to notice. Stoicism doesn't minimize that pain. It meets it head-on, not to crush it, but to carve meaning from it. Because the question isn't, why is this happening to me? But what is this trying to build in me? That's not toxic positivity. That's radical clarity, the kind that lets you stop fearing adversity and start learning from it. Pain doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're being shaped. Your patience, your courage, your self-respect. These don't appear when life is easy. They're revealed in the fire, and only the fire. So the next time something breaks, a plan, a relationship, a piece of your identity, pause, look deeper. Not to pretend it doesn't hurt, but to ask, what can I grow here that comfort never could? Because that question is where healing begins, and often where your truest self finally steps forward. 7. Cultivate inner riches. In a world that celebrates display, it's easy to mistake appearance for fulfillment. Success looks like a luxury car, a pristine home, a curated feed. But the Stoics weren't interested in how things looked. They were obsessed with how things felt, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Seneca said it plainly, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Craving isn't about need, it's about the illusion of lack. You could have everything and still feel empty. You could have very little and still feel whole. The difference, it's not wealth, it's wisdom. There's a quiet kind of poverty that lives in comparison. You start with contentment, but then you scroll. You look, you measure, you tell yourself you're behind, that if you just had that, maybe then you'd feel what they look like they're feeling. But what if they don't? Chasing more doesn't bring you closer to peace. It pulls you further from it, like trying to quench thirst with salt water. Inner richness isn't anti-success. It's just honest about where real value lives. It's knowing that joy can live in a modest room filled with love. That presence can be more luxurious than any possession. That calm is the rarest currency in the world and can't be bought. And the irony, when you stop chasing what doesn't matter, you create space for what does. Conversations with depth, mornings without anxiety, choices that reflect your values, not someone else's expectations. Cultivating inner wealth means this: you stop upgrading your lifestyle and start upgrading your inner life. You start asking better questions. You find satisfaction in being aligned, not applauded. And you begin to understand why the Stoics, thousands of years ago, walked through the world untouched by its noise. Not because they had nothing, but because they needed nothing to feel complete. 8. Understand and accept fate. Sometimes you do everything right. You show up, you work hard, you stay kind, and still things fall apart. The job goes to someone else. The relationship ends without warning. A diagnosis changes the shape of your future in one sentence, and the mind starts spiraling. Why? What did I miss? How could this happen? It's a question that haunts most of us, because deep down, we want to believe that effort guarantees outcome, that if we just do things correctly, life will reward us accordingly. But Stoicism draws a different line. It says, control your actions, release the rest. Epictetus put it clearly, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do. Not as a form of giving up, but as a pathway to peace. Acceptance, not in defeat, but in alignment, because sometimes the storm isn't a punishment, it's just weather, and you're not in control of the wind, only how you sail. Think of the person who trains for months for an opportunity that disappears overnight. The instinct is to label it unfair. But maybe, just maybe, the lesson wasn't in the opportunity itself. Maybe it was in who they became while preparing for it, in the discipline they built, in the inner strength they discovered. Accepting fate doesn't mean becoming passive. It means knowing where your influence ends and where trust must begin. It's recognizing that life isn't obligated to follow your script, and that doesn't make it cruel. It makes it real. The Stoics believed that when we stop wrestling with what's already happened, we free ourselves to move forward. Not bitter, not broken, but wiser, stronger, and more focused on what's still ours to shape. Because when you stop demanding the perfect outcome, you start discovering the power of an aligned response. And in that response, calm, grounded, present, you reclaim your peace, no matter what fate decides. 9. Be of service to others. We live in a world that often equates meaning with personal milestones, your career, your wealth, your recognition. But somewhere along that path, many people find success. and still feel hollow. That's because fulfillment doesn't come from standing above others. It comes from reaching back and lifting someone up. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." Not as a slogan, but as a philosophy of action. Service wasn't charity. It was identity. I once met a retired firefighter named Joseph. After decades of saving lives, he stepped into retirement and felt adrift. No alarms, no purpose. The silence was heavier than any call he'd ever answered. But then he began volunteering at a shelter, talking to young men recovering from addiction, listening more than advising. The work was slow, often invisible, but something in him began to heal. He wasn't chasing relevance. He was rediscovering meaning. Service does that. When you turn your energy toward others, not for applause, but out of care, you expand. Psychologically, emotionally, even spiritually, you become anchored not in what you own or achieve, but in what you give. And here's the thing, you don't need a platform or a badge to be of service. A listening ear, a small act of help, a moment of genuine attention. These are the quiet gestures that build lives, not just theirs, yours too. The Stoics weren't isolated thinkers. They believed virtue must be practiced in the world, with people. And one of the clearest expressions of that virtue is kindness. Not performative, not selective, just consistent, grounded, humble kindness. So ask yourself, where can I help today? Not because I should, but because I can. That's where meaning waits. Not in grand accomplishments, but in the quiet courage to care when it would be easier not to. 10. Reflect, review, and realign. Life moves fast, and often too fast for us to notice how far we've drifted. One day you wake up and something feels off. You're busy but not fulfilled, accomplished but not at peace. You're doing everything except living in alignment. And the worst part, you can't quite explain when or how it happened. That's why the Stoics built reflection into their daily lives, not as an afterthought, but as a discipline. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, ended his days not with indulgence but with questions. Where did I fall short? What did I do well? What can I do better tomorrow? He didn't do this to criticize himself. He did it to stay clear, because clarity is a kind of power. When you pause to reflect, you reclaim authorship of your life. You step off autopilot. You notice the compromises you've made, the goals that aren't really yours, the ways you've let urgency override what's actually important. And in that awareness, you get to choose again. Reflection doesn't mean dwelling. It means directing, looking back not to stay stuck, but to realign, to steer your ship before it veers too far from what matters. It's in that stillness that you ask the questions that noise usually drowns out. Am I living according to my values? Is my definition of success still mine? Have I become someone I'm proud of? Or just someone who performs well? Even a few quiet minutes a day can shift your trajectory, because you're not just reviewing your actions, you're reconnecting with your intention. That's the final Stoic principle here. Don't just live, lead yourself. Not by force, but by reflection. Not by perfection, but by presence. Let your life be something you shape, not something that happens to you. And when it veers, because it will, pause, reflect, and return. Again and again. That's not failure. That's mastery in motion. Letting go isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming wise. It's not turning your back on life. It's turning your attention toward what actually matters. The Stoics didn't teach us to stop feeling. They taught us how to feel without being ruled, how to care without crumbling, how to show up in the world with strength that doesn't scream, and peace that doesn't beg for permission. These 10 principles aren't just ideas, they're practices. They're the kind of inner tools you sharpen daily, especially when life doesn't go your way. And they're not about becoming someone else. They're about returning to who you were before the noise, the pressure, the distractions pulled you off center. So if any part of you felt lighter listening to this, if something clicked or softened or settled, don't ignore that. That's the part of you ready to grow. Which of these Stoic truths spoke to you the loudest? Drop it in the comments, not just for me, but for the others walking this path beside you. Because this isn't just a video, it's a community. It's a movement toward clarity, calm, and living with intention. And if you want more of this, more of the wisdom that helps you stand tall when life tries to knock you off balance, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell, join the practice, because peace isn't a one-time achievement. It's a lifestyle, and you're ready for it. And until next time, stay grounded, stay steady, and protect your peace like it's the rare treasure it is. I'll see you in the next one.